start filming now so that you've got a little bit of dead time at the beginning.
No, and
Like you have to let fine. Everything will be fine, really.
Okay, ready?
right.
Okay, everyone listening, please. Thank you.
This is our pitch for our movie Trial and Error. Our film is set in 1999 in a small city called Brighton. A man called Charlie and a woman called Dee are two well-educated and low-paid science teachers who are bored of their work. Charlie and Dee have a complicated past relationship that is often brought up mainly by Dee, as she is more affected by it. Charlie becomes obsessed with picturing people in mental anguish born through isolation, torture and torment. He finds that he takes pleasure in seeing how humans react to these situations and decides to indulge himself in these guilty pleasures. He starts spending time thinking about different ways he will be able to go through with these experiments to cause trauma. He starts realising that although he has a large amount of intelligence, he realises it would be almost impossible for him to go through with an experiment like this without someone else who shares the same brain capacity and likewise thinking as himself, so he tells Dee the plan.
His plan is to kidnap people that no one would miss, basically, unimportant people from society whose missing will go unnoticed. Once he has the people, he will be able to start carrying out these twisted experiments in torture, and he can document how the subjects progress by taking regular pictures of his prisoners. Charlie finally tells Dee, and at first she disagrees with his plans, but after showing her how fascinating the study of these subjects can be, she finally agrees. But slowly Dee starts to become obsessed in controlling over the subjects. She moves on to different torments quicker than planned. She slowly grows out of control. Charlie knows he needs to stop these experiments before it becomes too dangerous, but Dee catches him breaking into the lab, trying to free the people. Charlie ends up being the guinea pig to his own experiment and has to escape, only eventually being killed by Dee. The synopsis. For our opening title sequence, we plan on having it as a series of different images and clips of films. This idea is inspired by the film Seven, starring Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman. We will be editing the clips so that they're constantly cutting between the two settings. This will create confusion but also hint towards the plot of the film. The girl and the man both have material objects that they wear to make them recognisable. The man has a plain ring around his middle finger on his right hand, and the girl wears a red ribbon in her ponytail. We also never see the face of the man and only close-up of the girl's face. We will start the film with a dark blank screen. The sound of the girl panting slowly gets louder. The image of the girl running through the woods fades on. The noise and film gradually gets louder and creates an uncomfortable vibe. Then it suddenly cuts to silence. The next clip is of the man in a dark room cutting negatives. As the opening title sequence cuts back and forth with the girl running through the woods and the man cutting images, mounting them and annotating the photos, the cutting back and forth gets quicker and quicker and louder and louder. This becomes so overwhelming to a point where there is silence again. The girl slows down in the woods. When she breathes a final sigh of relief, a bag is pulled over her head by the man with the ring on his right hand and middle finger.
The lighting, it'll be kind of early morning-ish, because it will take, like, the forest scene will take place assumedly early morning, but there'll be a lot of kind of a washed out amber from the fallen leaves around the forest that will make a lot of noise as the girl runs. Then the darkroom parts, it will be more artificial red, it will be much darker because it's in a dark room, and it will reflect on the kind of constructed, almost artificial mind of Charlie, who finds pleasure in torturing people. And also it leaves space for us to highlight objects that can give hints at the narrative to come later, and it will contrast with the fear of the girl's panic. The light of the forest will contrast with the panic of the girl, because light is usually associated with safety. For the sound, use non-diegetic music throughout the OTS. The aim of the music is to create an eerie, sinister feeling. It will gradually get louder and more intense by the end. The music will start kind of slow and quiet with minimal instrumentation, which will contrast with the girls running and will corroborate with the calm mind of the antagonist. With the different clips, we'll also be using diegetic sound, like the girl running, making lots of noise on the leaves, and the sounds of the guy clipping up photos and cutting them, and that sort of thing.
In the dark room scenes, we will use props like film and photos that the antagonist will be working on, drawing on and clipping up to develop. These photos will give an idea of the narrative and hint at what is going on to happen down the line to the girl running through the forest. There will be scissors and other props found in the dark room areas. Other props will include weapons like sharp knives and guns, which are used to create suspense and build tension, which is typical of the thriller genre. The forest will contain a few props other than leaves on the ground and little girls telling features. Ribbon.
In our sequence, we'll be having a couple of different locations as it will be flashing backwards and forwards between them. The first location will be filming in Stanmore Park, as we'll be having the chase of the girl with the man, but their faces will not be shown apart from the girls to create a sense of kidnapping without actually happening on the screen. The second location will be filmed in Vining College Photography Darkroom, as the antagonist of the film is in the darkroom cutting up all the pictures, etc. etc. We have two different main characters. One is the antagonist, and his name is Charlie. He's 38 years old and he works at a secondary school with his TA, who's a woman who's also the protagonist, called Dee. They have worked together for 2.5 years. He wears smart casual clothing, like jeans, shirts, smart shoes, etc. He's slightly disturbed but feels a lot of guilt with practically anything he does. He is observant, shy and mysterious. Charlie manages to let his imagination grow without thinking about the circumstances. Although he is extremely intelligent, he is well known for not having the greatest amount of common sense. This makes him difficult to work with and talk to.
Protagonist, a bright, positive 35-year-old woman named Dee. She is described as kind, forgiving and easygoing for those who don't really know her. She seems to have a tipping point after knowing her for a certain amount of time. She's very complicated. She overthinks, she is obsessive and controlling. It is extremely difficult to stop her from a project which she has started. She is a control freak. She has an authoritarian personality. She also wears smart casual clothing and is very feminine. She enjoys being and feeling girly and wearing bright colours. And that is our pitch.
That is our pitch.
Excellent.
Okay, thank you guys for presenting. Does anyone have anything that they'd like to comment on what they've thought of that's well done or suitable for the genre? Duncan, or somebody from your group, one thing you liked?
I like quite a lot of that information. There's a full understanding of the whole film.
Okay, so quite detailed information.
Like suspense and stuff that they're going to do.
Okay, so you've thought of what techniques are going to create suspense. What about from your group? Anything that you think that they've done well?
I think how they've planned out the actual sequence, like how it's going to cut back and forth is really good, because it's like a non-linear sort of showing her being chased, so that's really good.
Now maybe over this side for things that we've got questions about or possibly some suggestions. What about anyone from your group?
There's one thing, like you said Charlie was like the antagonist at the time, but then in the next sentence you said there's a woman like who's the protagonist.
Yeah, that's part of the plot twist.
Well, it starts like, and then they kind of switch.
It switches.
Oh, right.
It's the twist. And
He starts off as a bad guy, she's the good guy,
yeah.
so she becomes obsessive.
she becomes the bad guy in the end, and he ends up becoming the good guy.
Okay, that's cleared up one of my questions.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because she does seem to have
Obvious, yeah.
certain characteristics of an antagonist, the controlling element of her. So I think maybe you could make that a bit more specific.
But
Yeah.
we're both very much on the line.
Yeah.
Okay,
It's really hard to
Kind of
put them
both
one way
understand
or
each
the other.
other.
okay. Any other questions or suggestions?
My question was like, just answers.
Let me just say, I think maybe throughout your presentation you need to link back to maybe opening title sequences that have influenced or informed your decisions a little bit more. I can see lots of elements of 7, but also there might be other opening title sequences that have influenced you, or certain character types. So maybe you could go back and either in a commentary after your PowerPoint you could add some of those in. Your victim in the opening title sequence, young girly, why did you go for that? I think you could develop that.
Innocent.
Innocence.
Yeah, I think you could develop that point a little bit more and maybe link to where you've seen that kind of victim previously. My last question is, you've got middle-aged characters. How are you going to cast for middle-aged people?
Lots of makeup.
Okay, so through costuming, are you actually playing the roles or are you getting other people in?
We're not really showing the faces, but if we need
Fair enough.
someone.
If we need, we'll it's a work in progress.
Okay, well that needs to
That
be...
still might be up in the air. But
Okay, so you might need to think about costuming, and yes, of course, if you're not revealing faces, then you might be able to get away with that a bit more. Oh, another question.
It's not really a question, but next time can you actually sort of present it on the video sheet?
Oh, well, that's something to be considered for your presentation. We might be looking for that for your presentation. One more question?
If the victims are meant to be like not men, a girl would be like a young girl would be like they would know that she's gone missing. So
well, she'd probably be an orphan or something like this.
They will be missed, but like as in she is an orphan who's had a bad
Slipped out of
background.
the system.
She's kind of out of the system.
Yeah.
So maybe like a foster child or someone that's run away or thought to have run away.
Work it out.
Maybe implied maybe how she's dressed.
The opening title sequence doesn't say everything about the whole film, it just hints towards certain things.
And any other feedback? Anything else? Okay, thank you very much.